Michael Cole is a beauty business industry leader and co-founded the Summit Salon Business Center, which builds independent hairdressers and salons all over the country. Today, we're going to hear his story, what he's doing now, and his perspective on rising stylists. Welcome back to the Hairdresser Strong Show. My name is Robert Hughes, and I'm your host. And today, I'm with Michael Cole. How are you doing today, Michael?
Very good, Robert. Thank you very much for inviting me to the conversation. I've been looking forward to this.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. I know your work and helping salons, systemize their business and help maximize revenue potential. And I think this is a really good. I'm really excited to hear your what you're doing now and what you're. I know, like you've been talking to a lot of rising stylists, and there's a lot of people wanting to hear more and more about working with them, who they are, what they're, what the things to look out for, what things to celebrate. So why don't we start off by hearing, your background and your story real quick.
Oh, sure. Well, in a nutshell, I graduated from beauty school in 75. I'll let you do the math. So as you can see, I'm on the back end of my ride. It's been a glorious ride. With behind the chair for just about 10 years. My wife is also a hairdresser, and so we kind of grew up in the business together. Had an opportunity to manage salons, had an opportunity to own a number of salons, and was really at a young age, in addition to being taught we'll call it the art of hairdressing, really introduced to the business side of the art and just became fascinated with that and started only because it had had such a profound impact on my own income. I started teaching other hairdressers kind of what I was learning. Boom goes the dynamite. This is way, way, way back now. There was very little, if any, of that conversation going on in the 80s. So I was, one of the first. I started also, there was a number of salon owners that would come and hear me speak at various shows and say, hey, can you come to my salon and engage my staff in the conversation that you've engaged me in at this show, because I think it would serve them. And that's how I kind of accidentally fell into, a coach as a hairdresser level and at the salon owner level. And then sometime in the mid 90s, L'Oreal, actually Ritkin at the time, I signed on with them as a independent business educator. And I'll tell you, that was like nitroglycerin on a bonfire, because I didn't have to give a lot of thought to, marketing myself anymore. And then on the front end of the new millennium, 2002-ish, had the opportunity to co-found Summit Salon Business Center. And that was a glorious ride. I'm on the back end of that now, kind of being moving into the last era of my life, being bought out of that business. I stay very close to that community. I love them. And in the last, probably year, have become absorbed, obsessed, if you will, spending more and more of my time in really well-run and world-class premier beauty schools, and seeing how, as you call them, rising stars, where are the top 5-10% of students that are enrolled, and what are they learning that's different than the traditional, and to watch them kind of blow up any charts or performance standards, following them out into the salons and seeing them get to levels of income more, better, faster than any of us have really seen. So that's been thrilling, and I'll probably going to stay with doing that until.
Nice. So you started off as a hairstylist?
Yes.
And you worked your way through the industry, wearing many hats, including salon ownership and education. And you started Summit and to help salons, systemize their business. And if anybody's heard of and if you never heard of this, Michael Cole or Summit, you should definitely check it out. And if you've ever heard of tiered system, and you wanted to know how do you move from junior to associate or whatever the terminology you have for the different levels. Um, what I know about Summit is that is basically gives you a formula for how to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure so much more.
Oh yeah, yeah, the career pathing. So
Yeah.
helping a hairdresser to go from zero, ground zero, to get to higher levels of excellence, performance, productivity. We call it growing service providers for a living.
But
And it shows them that there's a vision and a place for them to grow.
and I think it's a really interesting place to start this conversation about rising stylist. And I go into the schools and I guest speaker and I talk to them about their future and listen to them. Tell me what their vision is and how they intend on achieving it. And I would say, and I stopped for maybe 7 years or so, and so I would say from 2013, 2010 to about 2018 or so, 2019, I didn't go into the schools and talk to the students at all. And when I went back into the schools after that period of time, Instagram had happened, social media had changed hairdressing in such a big way. And the students that were in the schools were completely different. They were really interested in what I had to say, and they really wanted to talk about business. They had a lot of questions about business. They didn't even ask about how to do hair. But in previous generation that I was used to talking to, they were not interested in business. If you talked about business, they were like, "You're taking away the art out of hairdressing, and I'm just a hairdresser. I don't sell products. I don't do pre-book. I don't do anything. I'm just like a hairdresser, and I'm just going to focus on the hair." And now these kids are like, I need to be good at hair, but I also need to be good in business, which means they're not necessarily looking. I mean, they want to be good, but it's also like a balance in their growth, and what they want. So, what are you seeing? Are you seeing that as well?
No,
And
no, you're right. You're right on the bullseye, and it all happened seemingly, suddenly, all at once. To your point, it was like this traditional curve, and with I think the social media, but specifically, the Instagrams, the TikToks, it's almost like they hit critical mass, and the evolution of that platform, and people, hairdressers, learning how to really take maximum advantage of those platforms, where all of a sudden, in your day, my day, our day, it used to take, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years to get to a very credible place. And seemingly overnight, now people can get to that place and then some. And it looks like 20, 30% of the time that it would take. It's almost like the time has collapsed, the learning curve, and it just kind of blew it up. And to your point, they want to know. They have an appreciation of, as much of an appreciation of the business side of the art
yeah,
than they
yeah,
do the art, and they're not intimidated by the conversation. They don't think it compromises on the integrity of the art to have the conversation. And to a business educator like myself, that's very refreshing, very exciting to geek out about that.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Oh well, what else have you noticed about salons and, or sorry, schools, and what these kids are learning? And we did before the show, we talked a little bit about that. You were talking about, what are these kind of like high performers? Where are they going? What are they learning? And what are they? Give us a little bit of
Sure,
a preview.
sure. Well, when once upon a time, when you went to school and I went to school, you kind of, you enrolled. There was depending on the state, 1,500, 1,800 hours. You spent the first part of that, and I used to call it the room with no windows.
Yeah,
Basics, fundamentals, and you had a mannequin, and you did all that, and then you went on the floor and you did hair, and you went to classes, and that was it, and it worked. And Now, when I go into what I would call kind of the, world class cosmetology schools, you go into what we call fundamentals, and yeah, you see it's the room with no windows, and they've got their mannequins in it. But in addition to that, you see, oh, what's this? Oh, everybody is opening up their Instagram business page. So if you don't have a page, we're going to get you set up. And so there's, a few classes, and this is in fundamentals now. And it's like, okay. And well, what are we going to do? We're going to start creating content. Well, I'm not on the floor yet. That's all right. We're going to start, documenting your journey. And, when you're working, whether it's on models, mannequins, both, and start building your community. And the end in mind is, you're going to hang out in this room for a couple of months, give or take, a few $100s. But we're going to set a goal for you to have 25 people booked on your book before you start. Well, at face value, this flies. This is kind of like counterintuitive. I'm not, I don't have any clients yet. Don't worry about it. We're just gonna, and students start having surprising experiences. At first you got your family and friends following you, but people start making appointments, and it's like, what? And I've been witnessing this now, and so in these schools you'll see 20, 25 people in the book, and then the I call them the Jedis, the people that were hanging out. They've been doing hair since they were seventh, eighth grade. It's kind of, they're cut from the cloth. They'll have 50, 60 people booked while they're in fundamentals, and it's like, oh my God, I've never seen this. And then you follow them out on the floor. And by the way, I'll bring somebody in fundamentals on Instagram Live with me because I want to be a part of their documentary. So, part of that is we're going to have you. And I'll tell you what, once you get on the floor, every time you go to the next level or whatever the credential is, love to have you back for an encore. See how far you get in school. I'll even follow you out when you've went into your whatever salon you're going into, because I'd like to see your journey. I've got the opportunity. Why not? So now they're on the floor in school. And I noticed that in the good old days, a beauty educator, a beauty instructor was really the person on the floor that kind of checked haircuts, or made sure that, the students weren't hanging out in the back room, kind of like, doing that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I'm in the schools now. I go, wait a minute, what's going on? Well, the educators are doing I'm going to call it real time coaching on the floor, where they're a part of the consultation. And at first, it's doing a consultation for a student, and then it's almost like they're the pilot, the student is the co pilot. And then as the student starts catching on, the student becomes the pilot, the educator is the co pilot, and then the student is flying the airplane. And inside of this consultation, you'll see upselling of services. During the process, you'll see retailing, you'll see rebooking, the asking for a referral, and the educator is as much or more part of the process as a student is. Now, they're not violating any laws. It's not like they're rendering the service. All work is done by students, but the bigger part is they're a part of the guest service experience, consultation, greeting, those kinds of things. And I wasn't used to seeing that. And I could see where an educator, a traditional educator, would be intimidated. Like, okay, it's been a while since I've done this. But most of those educators that are in these schools also work in salons. So they're basically kind of bringing that skill set with them. It's not a once upon a time I did this a long time ago. It's no, what I'm doing with you today, I did last night. To now, educators are, in addition to that, coaches. They're performance coaches, so that once a month, a student has an opportunity to have a 30, 45-minute coaching session with their educator, and they set monthly service goals, monthly retail goals, monthly referral goals, monthly rebook goals. And, the name of the game is to hit these. And when you do, you go from wherever you are to the next level. So in these schools, they have the summit systems where 1, 2, 3, 4, they call them levels. And your average student probably gets to level 3-ish, give or take, before it's time to graduate. But, you get a Jedi to get to the 5th level, the 6th level, doing, 15, 1,800 bucks a month in service, $300-400 a month in retail as a student.
Yeah, at those small low prices.
Yeah, right. And the price points are pretty, they're at very, very low price points. So I'm witnessing this, and it's blowing the sides off of my brain box, frankly, because I'm not. And what I remember in school, we all get to a place, we got 1,000 hours in, another 500, and it's like, oh man, I'm over school. I want to get out of here. And they used to call it the senior syndrome. I'm kind of like in quit and stay, marking my time. I don't in not the schools that I'm part of. You don't see that. They're like, wow, I've got another 100 hours yet left. I wonder if I can get to this next level. And meanwhile, all of a sudden, you start watching the Instagram pages or the TikTok pages, and the work evolves, the content's evolving, the community is growing. Some of these people, gosh, 600, 700 followers, and so now it's time to go, and in your last 300-400 hours, it's you kind of look at the salons you think you the area you want to work at, and then they're beginning to vet out salons. So they'll Google top salons in Kansas City, Ames, Iowa, go to their Google pages, their websites, their Instagram pages to kind of see if okay, are they in the same game I'm in? So it almost looks like the student is vetting out the salon before the student expresses interest in wanting to work there. So these are all new phenomenons that I've not seen in my 40 years of hanging out in the beauty industry, and it's fascinating.
So what I'm seeing when I'm going to schools is that maybe 10% of the students are working in salons while they're in school. I'm
Mm.
seeing that none of them, and they say things like, "I just want to focus on school." And for me, that's kind of like, to me, that doesn't make any sense. And I think that getting your foot in the door doesn't seem to be something that's being taught and not being talked about. And I'm wondering, my initial thought is that if I'm in school, I should be working at a salon at least like maybe halfway in, maybe the first half after you learn kind of the foundational stuff, getting your foot in the door at a salon so that you can hop around until you find the one you like seems to be like a much better move than waiting till the 11th hour and then being super stressed out that they don't have a job and then end up taking. I've had so many students call me and be like, "Oh my gosh, I get it," and these students don't get a job while they're in school. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I went to this place and it was great and they promised me all these things and it's not the way it's supposed to be, and now they're telling me it's another 6 months and it's already been 6 months and they said it would be 6 months." And are you seeing any of that? And do you have any
Yeah,
thoughts
yeah.
on that?
Well, yeah, and yes, to your point, I think you're right on the bullseye. I can tell you what my intuitions tell me as I look. Forever, my experience in the industry as a kind of a salon consultant is there was always, from the mind of a salon owner, a gap between what schools were graduating in terms of skill set and really what the salon really needed. There was always that dismay, and it's like, okay, we got to catch the schools up, and so that the students are graduate with more readiness, and then sometimes you would hear I have to untrain a graduate because whatever it is they learned really wasn't. And I heard that for probably 20 plus 30 years. I'm hearing less of that. That in some areas, schools, in terms of what they're graduating in readiness from a skill set on both business, guest or client handling, especially the technical, modern hair color. Um, they're equal to, and sometimes beyond what I would call a traditional entry level. So, for the first time in the history, salon owners are getting, they're being asked new questions. And when you show up in a salon and you have an Instagram page as a student that you is equal to or greater than many people in the very salon you're starting in, that can cause some disruption. We're in a real transitional time now where, Generation Z, the Zennial, are very digital, social, digital marketing, branding driven, and their skill sets there are they're leading edge. And boomer genre, Gen X genre, sometimes even kind of a middle to senior millennial genre, don't have the presence on social, and or don't have the digital savviness, and they're busy. It's not like they're dying. It's just that they built full clienteles when there was no such thing as a mobile device, never mind social media space. So how that's going to shake out in the next 10 years or so, stay tuned, more will be revealed. But it really has created a, I don't know if I'd call it a dilemma. We could call it an opportunity. And I'm encouraging salon owners that are in my community to, you can see it as a threat or you can see it as an opportunity.
So I sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but I want to. I feel like we should have a whole conversation about salon owners and
Sure.
rising stylists. But so why don't we go into that for our next time we talk? But before we I don't want to cut it off here just yet. I'm curious to know do you think that it's a good idea that young rising stylists work in a salon while they're in school, or do you not necessarily? Do you think that that's not that conventional advice is? Do you have
I
any poke
yeah.
any holes in that conventional advice or wisdom?
I think it was very, very, very relevant. I don't want to say it's irrelevant now. I think it's of less importance than it was, unless you're. I now see in any given year one or two career days where a more progressive salon will show up in a school with a kiosk, and the students, kind of network, if you will, with, and sometimes there are conversations are kind of incubated in that day or half a day, and a student will be invited to come into a salon, assuming they kind of hit it off at career day, to shadow, and to see what it's like to a zennial would say, to check out the vibe, to check
Yeah.
out and both players are checking each other out, but it's not as you could call it internship, isn't as needed, isn't as crucial as it was a few years ago. So where it's going to go, stay tuned. More will be revealed. But I don't see as much of that from the school communities that I've been hanging out at.
Hmm. Okay, and do you have any thoughts on? Let me see. Have you heard from any of if you're talking to the kind of the as you said in the past the first draft picks of in the schools. um have you had many communications with with any of the other students maybe that are operating at a middle to upper middle level, maybe not quite all the way that high? And if you have, then would you say that they've had any issues as they go into the workforce? Because I feel like if first round draft picks, they're probably gonna have more options than somebody maybe who is a little bit lower because the for many reasons. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Uh, w- y- yes, and I see it today still, but not as much. And I would call it a kind of a culture clash. So, in the good old days, gaining referrals was about, you do a great job when the client's in your chair and you ask the client for referrals, and or when you're out in the, local community, you're, I don't know, networking, introducing yourself to people at events, who you are, what you do, and why, what makes you relevant. I don't want, and that was forever, and in a lot of salons, that's still the prevailing gospel. But today, you'll see in the younger genre, I'm witnessing, you can there's a play on Instagram or TikTok if you understand how to create content, whether we're talking reels or carousels or whatever that is, where one right reel brings you in 6, 7 referrals, and you go, whoa, how many cards would you need to hand out, one card at a time, to get 6 or 7 referrals?
Right.
And you start comparing those two. Those are two very, very different modum of operandi. So a student that is a Jedi at creating content on Instagram or TikTok is saying, I this is kind of sort of, I can make my own rain, if you will. And you walk into a salon that forever that's been the tradition that we hand out cards, we promote ourselves, and a student says, "Yeah, I know, but I don't want to do that." Like, is
Right.
this about me getting referrals in my book, or is this about getting referrals in my book your way? And if it's about your way, I think I'm gonna continue to Google salons in this area, because they're taking they're drawing a line in the sand and saying, just because you did that and it took you a long time to do that, I don't want to do that. I found another way. It's a faster way, and I'm just not going to hand out cards. And boy, that can be a very emotionally charged conversation, depending on who you. And when I show up, I always position myself to say, "Look, I'm a reporter at large. I'm not advocating. I'm going to love you regardless of how you're going to do your deal. I would just suggest that understand the changing game and the trade-offs and the consequences of holding on to a position, because what's coming at us isn't right, isn't wrong. It just is what it is."
That's good, and I think that's a good place to wrap it up. And I think we've kind of painted a picture of the rising stylists, who they are, and some of the upsides to this new generation. And so I think next time we talk, we should talk about so from the salon's perspective, and kind of address some of the things that they're saying. And but until then, I want to just thank you for coming on the show, and I'm really looking forward to expanding even more on this topic and the next time we talk.
Thanks for having me. Anytime, my friend.
Awesome. All right. Take care.